After 4 decades of owning classic cars and hundreds of restorations under my belt, I've definitely learned a thing or two about turning rusty gems into reliable drivers. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the initial steps I always take when I bring a car home. If you don't know me already, I'm Jason. I'm the owner of Gearhead Garage. I've owned my shop for over 22 years. I've seen it all and I've made a ton of the mistakes, so you don't have to. If you're serious about doing classic cars the right way, this checklist could save you thousands of dollars in painful aggravation. It's going to help you spot hidden problems and avoid sneaky seller scams. You'd be crazy to go look and buy a classic car without this easy checklist. Let's dive in and make sure your new classic car is ready for the road. Anytime I buy a car, I want to make sure that I know what oil is in there, so I'm going to do an oil change every time without fail. Most of these muscle cars are old technology, so they don't have what's called a roller camshaft with roller lifters, so they require a special oil or a special oil additive. If you don't know whether or not you have a roller camshaft, I suggest you put in a zinc additive that's going to make up for the low zinc oils that we have today. This is going to protect the camshaft from premature wear. I also like to put in a nice quality oil. I always lean on a thicker oil because I want the oil to be able to do its job. So whenever I get a car, I want fresh fluids in there so I've got a good baseline and I know moving forward that everything's okay. To that end, I'm probably going to change my transmission fluid, check and change my coolant. Any of the basic fluids that I can get to, I want to go ahead and go after. I also want to make sure that I do a full tune-up on the car. To me, it's important that I'm checking the distributor cap and the wires and making sure everything's in good condition. I might actually take the cap off so I can look inside and look at the contacts, clean the cap, the rotor, and everything in there. Also, I like to change the spark plugs. A lot of people aren't that fastidious about changing spark plugs, but I like to start off with new spark plugs. It gives me a chance to read the spark plug. When I pull the spark plug out to change it, I can see if it's dirty, if it's oil soaked, if it's fuel soaked. It's just a great chance to kind of get a feel for how the engine is actually operating. Additionally, it allows me to make sure my spark plug wires are on tight and not going to be burning against any kind of headers or any exhaust or anything of that nature. Really just getting in there and doing a basic tune-up does two things. One, obviously it makes sure the engine is optimized and running right, but most importantly, it just kind of gets you familiar with the layout under the hood. You don't have to be a master mechanic to get in here and do some of the basic things on your car. Just get in there, get familiar with your car, and you'll know what you're looking at moving forward. And if anything ever changes, you'll know, hey, this used to look like that. This used to be positioned here. It used to idle like this. Just get to know and familiarize yourself with the car. So one of the simplest, most important things is I want to make sure that my battery terminals are tight, my battery cables are in good shape, and my charging system is in good condition. This car's been sitting and I can see I've got an older battery, 2 of 18, so that guy's about 6 years old. So even though it's a pretty good battery, I don't think I'm going to trust it. So we're going to go ahead and replace the battery, but when I do so, I want to make sure that all of my terminals are nice and tight, we don't have corrosion. I want to make sure that I secure the battery properly, so I'll make sure that I'm going to get some kind of a bracket or a brace to hold the battery in place, and then get it running and just make sure the charging system's working properly. If you have a volts gauge on your dash or an ammeter, you can probably tell through that gauge. But if not, you can either use a tool like a voltmeter to check battery charging, or you can actually pull the negative cable off when it's running. It's kind of a cheat to make sure that the charging system's working and the engine doesn't just die. If it dies right away when you take the cable off, I try starting the car again, revving it a little bit, because these one wire type aftermarket alternators need to be excited before they start to charge. But again, once you know it's charging or you think it's up to speed and should charge, pull that cable off. If the car instantly dies, you definitely have some kind of a problem with your charging system and you should look deeper. One last note, make sure if you have 2 battery cables like this car does, you have to take both negative cables off, because simply taking one off wouldn't do anything. So if you have a second ground here and a primary ground here, you're going to make sure you take them both off. That's the only way you're really going to be testing properly. Another important thing that's really at the top of my list is having gauges that work. I was just showing you how you can unhook your battery to see if your battery is charging. Simply having a volts meter, a volts gauge, or an ammeter is really going to help you understand if the battery's charging. More importantly, I want to be able to monitor the engine and make sure that all systems are a go. So a set of gauges that has like a temp gauge, an oil pressure gauge, and a volts gauge, those are most important. If your car didn't come with a good set of gauges, you can just buy like a gauge duo or a gauge trio that can bolt underneath the dash so that you can have functional gauges that you can actually read and use. It's also nice to have a speedometer that's accurate, potentially a tachometer, and probably most importantly a fuel gauge. So when you get into your classic car, I really recommend that you make sure the gauges are working. If they're not working, try to get them up and going, and if you need to, consider adding some supplemental gauges so you can monitor systems and protect your investment. One thing that I think is taken for granted quite often is seat belts. So often I'll buy a car and I don't even bother to check if the seat belts work, right? So I want to make sure the seat belt is attached securely to the floor. Otherwise, it's really not a safety belt. When you're first buying a car, you really want to make sure it's got a seat belt in it, or a good seat belt, because you're really getting into something that you've never really driven before, and you want to be protected if something were to happen, right? So also, a lap belt is certainly better than nothing. A lot of older cars didn't even have a mandate for a lap belt when they were built back in the 50s and 60s. Most cars will have that traditional lap belt, which a lot of people say is dangerous because you can sever your back or something in a major crash. But again, I'd rather be held locked in. But consider getting yourself a set of 3-point seat belts. A lot of companies make kits that you can put in these cars, and so now you know that you're locked in, safe and secure. Another thing that I love to have, speaking of security and my own personal comfort, I just feel safer if I've got all the mirrors working properly in the car. So most of these cars legally have to have a rear view mirror, so you could assume you're probably going to have a rear view mirror. Technically, I know here in California, law states if you don't have a rear view mirror, you have to have 2 side view mirrors, and that can suffice as well. But honestly, anytime I can, I make sure I've got a good driver's side mirror, a good passenger side mirror, and a good rear view mirror, because let's be honest, it's hard to see out of these cars already. I can whip my neck around and look and pay attention to everything, but there aren't that many good drivers out there. I want to be able to see what's happening around me. One of the things I'm big on, in addition to reliability, comfort, and drivability, is going to be safety. So especially when I've got a manual transmission car, I like to make sure that I have a good functional parking brake. If you have a car that's a manual trans, a stick shift, you need that e-brake or that parking brake to help hold the car when it's parked on a hill, right? I wouldn't trust it in gear. Growing up in San Francisco, I know well that a car that's just parked in gear can actually try to roll away. So a good functional parking brake is surprisingly important. And also, you got to remember that in case of emergency, these actually do double as an emergency brake. So if your brakes were to fail or something else was to go terribly wrong, I think I would want to make sure that I have a parking brake that is also known as an emergency brake. But comfort and ability to control the vehicle is very important. I always love to make sure that I put power steering on my own personal cars. Unless you've got a need for real tight manual steering, like for racing, or if you have a really big steering wheel, I personally think that power steering really gives you a lot more comfortable ride and a heck of a lot better command and control over the vehicle. Next up, I'll talk about braking. One of the most important things to me is being able to stop well. So many of these old cars came just stock with drum brakes. I'm not a big fan of drum brakes. I know in some applications they work great, but generally speaking, I'm going to prefer to put disc brakes on my car, at least front disc brakes. So I would consider upgrading to a set of decent front disc brakes. They don't have to be high performance race brakes. You can either get something simple like a stock OE type disc brake, or you can do something like on this GTO that has an upgraded Willwood brake. What I don't like personally about drum brakes is if they're not adjusted perfectly or they're worn out unevenly, what they'll do is they'll have a tendency to pull. So if you hit the brakes when the car tries to slow down, it might pull to one side or the other. Disc brakes almost never have that problem. So for that reason, disc brakes are something that I always put on my cars. In addition to disc brakes, if you can, much like I said, I like power steering, I'm a fan of having power brake assist. So a vacuum power brake booster is generally going to give you a lot better pedal feel and actually better stopping. So consider picking up a power brake booster for your car. If it's just a manual brake system, you can generally order a power brake booster that can simply insert between the master cylinder and the firewall, configure it to the pedal, and voila, power brakes. In terms of drivability, in my opinion, comfort, safety, and reliability, I would definitely suggest a power brake upgrade. When you own a classic car, it's extremely common to struggle with keeping the engine cool. So often we see cooling system issues, overheating and the like. So I'm always going to try to upgrade the cooling system any which way I can. In this case, we went extreme and I did an aluminum radiator with heavy duty electric fans. This is going to make sure that when the engine's at idle, stuck in traffic, it's flowing a ton of air and keeping temps down. It's also triggered so when the AC goes on, it kicks on to cool the AC systems. It's also triggered so that when you turn the AC system on, it turns the fans on, which is going to help keep the engine cool, and it'll also keep the AC condenser cool, which is going to keep you cooler. In any effect, a larger fan combo like something like this electric, or at least like on this Monte Carlo, you can see that we've got a nice clutch fan and a nice shroud. The point being is we need to make sure that we're able to pull air through the radiator effectively. Those electric fans really kick butt, but a simple system like this with a good shroud and a good fan combo that's positioned in there properly is really going to be a great upgrade to make sure that your car's not going to run hot, overheat, and leave you stranded. Nothing makes me more hot than being stuck on the side of the road overheating. Next up, the best bang for the buck improvement for your classic car is to throw an oversized heavy-duty front sway bar. Any of these cars out of the factory usually had a really small front sway bar, oftentimes the size of my pinky or slightly larger. Some cars like Darts and a lot of others didn't even come with a sway bar at all. I always try to put a larger sway bar on the front because what that's going to do is when I hit a bump on the right side, it's going to transfer some of that impact over to the left side. And most importantly, when I'm getting on the freeway, instead of the car leaning and totally swaying, a sway bar is going to try to keep that thing a lot more stout, so I lose a lot of that boaty feeling. Speaking of which, if you really want to lose that boaty feeling, especially on some of the bigger body cars, you could actually add a rear sway bar as well. It's a great way to make that car just feel a lot tighter and a lot smoother going down the road. Okay, last up is one that I know I'm gonna get some guff about because a lot of people are stubborn or have their own positive experiences. I'm just sharing my experience with you. I will almost every time eliminate ignition points and go to an electronic ignition type conversion kit. If you don't know what points are inside the distributor, and as the distributor turns, they're constantly sparking, multiplying the spark through the coil and then going back out the spark plug wires to the spark plugs. They're like a $10 effective part that just does all of your spark control. But they're finicky, they need to be adjusted, they need to be replaced periodically, and as such, I generally will go with an electronic ignition. Now, I know the points worked fine for so many people for so many years, but electronic ignition is going to be a little bit better spark as a rule. It's not going to need adjustment. It's going to be something that most people that are not mechanics will be benefiting from. They make some good quality, relatively affordable kits that you can do just to swap out inside your own stock distributor to upgrade to electronic ignition. Really, in any of the upgrades that we're talking about here today, I'm always talking about wanting to use quality parts. If you use cheap points or you use cheap electronic ignition, you might get stranded. So when you're doing your car, make sure you're using quality parts anytime you can. Overall, this is just to give you a feel for the things that I know I do every time I buy a car. I want to make sure that I'm updating it, upgrading it, making it more reliable, more comfortable, making myself feel a lot safer in the car, and just getting an overall better feel for the car. That comes down to driving feel, that comes down to understanding and knowing my car feel, and having that confidence that I'm going to be able to drive that car out on the road day in, day out without any problems. Avoid costly mistakes and rip off classic cars. Instantly grab your ultimate buyer's checklist so that you make sure that you're never burned buying a classic car again.